Yes, a good day to everyone. This is my second lecture on the strategic information systems. But to move to our idea about information system, to give you a short background, we have two major assumptions about our interpretation of the strategic information systems, and I will push to the second definition, which is a more broad or more encompassing definition of what an information systems and organizations are. So this lecture, number one, our target is to explain more on the role of our information systems in the organizations, and some maybe depending on the theory part. So our to give you a short summary of what's the discussion before, we focused before on the definition of strategic information systems. And as I can remember, we have identified two major perspectives on what a strategic information systems is. Our number one is that strategic information systems are systems designed to support high level or strategic in nature functions of organizations such as the executive or middle and upper level management. On the other hand, a more encompassing definition, which I advise you to adopt on this course, is that it is an information system in any level of organization designed strategically to achieve competitive advantage of the organization, or to lessen the risk or maybe some difficulties encountered or less efficient part of the organization in general. So we adopt the second, although we don't ignore that there is an existing belief that strategic information systems are actually designed for the strategic level of management, but or the executive level. But we will, as I said, we will adopt the second part, which it focuses on any type of information systems as long as it supports the organization's goal as part of its business strategy, basically to gain competitive advantage. Okay, so this lecture is reviewing and maybe introducing some new parts about information systems in the organization. So to give you the basic concepts about organization, we have here the information system as a concept, since we adopt a more broader definition of what an information system is. So we will go back to the basic knowledge where that information systems actually coming from. So here in this diagram, we viewed information system as a process composed of major concepts that would definitely later made up the information system as a whole. But this one will explain the foundation of where information systems actually are coming from. We will start with data. And the data would be formatted, filtered, and summarized to be transformed into information. So that means we define data information as a process data, where processes can be some way of formatting, filtering, or summarizing data. So in my basic example for my undergraduate course, sometimes it's hard to differentiate between data and information, but most of my students know, for instance, that we will not only consider the format, filter, and summarize part, but also the context in which that data is being used. One very good example of its difficulty considering the processing only without considering the context is the age of the person. If we say the number 26, or let's say the number 12, for instance, as an age or as a date, it can be considered as a data as of now. 12 is data. When you process that age into 12, it will become an information. But somehow, if only one, that's the only data, or the numeric data will be given, we cannot say that it was processed in terms of format. Maybe there's something like a format or a filter or summarization. But the age, for instance, if we will consider the context given, so we still define it as an information, but we didn't process the information, but we contextualize it. So that means the definition of the process data to convert to become information somehow doesn't consider the contextual interpretation of data, which some also would consider a process. So that means we can still stick to the original definition of what information is, which is a process data. But I would like to emphasize that some data and information are in the same form, so we need to contextualize it to become an information. I hope that's clear for you. Next is we need to interpret, decide, and act. So that's the basic definition of information systems supporting decision making. We interpret, decide, act based on that summarized information, and we get the results. So that would be the accumulated knowledge. So we have data, information, and we have here the third one is emphasized is knowledge down. So knowledge are accumulated, are actually accumulated interpreted information or actions to become knowledge, and it's somehow in the form of information system as a system or a systems thinking perspective. It will loop into the data, which will knowledge would feed into the how we process and format our data collection, and how it will also provide input to how we interpret, decide, and act on the information given. So if we can see here, there is a loop actually in the concept of information systems perspective. By the way, when we say information systems before, we are looking at the process itself or the system, not the individual technology. That's why we have here the basic concepts identified to classify something as a system or an information system. So we know that there is a level, but somehow each level will undergo into a process so that it can, and there is a loop among those processes to be considered as a system. Okay, let's move on. This is a more basic knowledge about a definition about various aspects in the earlier diagram. You can pause the video to read the contents of this slide, but of course you may I've already explained what's our interpretation. I think you may read. I'm not sure. Oh, so this the last part is where should I mabasa? Expertise, that expertise, I think, sorry. The slides is not prepared for the videos that I am preparing. Okay, so I will move the video na lang from time to time to illustrate some areas na dapat makita. Okay. So next is we have here the characteristic of information systems. We have this is just to enumerate some to remind us also of the capabilities and support of information, or maybe its limitations in the organization, and to clarify also some interpretation of what information systems in the organization in the organizational context. First, we have given the system earlier and data, information, and knowledge, we have several different information systems can exist in one organization. So take note that if we say information system, although they are connected, but they can be interpreted as separate systems for depending on which task they are supporting. And it can be part of an information system, and it can be named, although they are connected, it can be named in a different way. So for instance, we have ESMS, it can be also interpreted as we have a system supporting the human resource, but at the same time, we are accessing the same data. So take note that it's not limited only to one function. That's why we identify that each of those connected information systems can be considered an information system from its individual system or module to the total. We call this inter-organizational systems if it supports outside the organization. And our assumption also that it is particular information system are also composed of several separate systems and connected by means of electronic networks. It can be a wired or wired. So in this class, we can classify information system depending on its organizational support on organizational structure, maybe the functional areas, the support it provides, and the system architecture in which it was designed, and the specific activity that the information system is supporting. So in terms of organizational structure, looking at the organizational structure or the organization as a whole, we can see that various information system can be identified, and they can be named as follows. It can be a department information system if that belong to a department. Enterprise information system, if the information system is designed to support the entire organization, and inter-organizational systems if it supports one or two organization. So meaning trans information system, it can go beyond the organization. So there are technologies that will support the connection between the two organizations. So we can look at also information systems based on its function, or classifications of IS based on function. So example, there are various systems that supports the systems operations of the organization. It can be in function of an organization as parts accounting. We have an IS can support the finance, marketing, and human resource. So we are looking here in this perspective that information systems support various functions, and they can also be named on that particular, depends on that particular functions. And most of these systems they call a transaction processing system. On majority of these systems supports transaction processing system, which can be considered a routine or repetitive task of the organization. And they are very critical in our, when we go back to our main framework, this is critical because they are the one capturing the data, and our interpretation is we want them to be prepared for the interpretation or summary. So remember, this type of information system normally gather data within the organization, and this would be interpreted later or summarized as information. So their presence is very critical. I'm not saying that the functional view of information system can only support transaction processing system. Also, they can also support the higher level part. And they can also be classified as function or department in the organization. Let me go back. We have here classification by function within the department, classification by function. So this is an illustration of how the organization can be seen with how the organization are connected through information systems by various functions of the organization. So this can also be another perspective, business perspective. Okay, so that's it. So let me go back. This is a perspective of the business. So you can also, this can, if you will be on the value chain, you can also see this one. So I hope that's it.